Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia, chapter 394, the My Hero Academia Simp Years. Hey everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're doing great. Anyway, apologies for the camera. You can see the other cameras behind me, but I'm just not able to move it right now, so we're just doing the old camera. But hey everyone, welcome. So, 394, last week was fiery, this week was fiery. I'm not talking about the content in the manga, I'm talking about the stuff online. Yeah man, people get really upset bro, holy man. And to me, I'm just getting old. My body hurts. I don't have the time to get that upset about a children's manga. A manga aimed for young kids. An idealistic manga, I just don't have the time for it. And when it comes to these, really controversial or really, fiery debates, I really think, I think it's okay to express your thoughts and maybe work through it if you want to have a nice discussion about the merits. Point out the cons, point out the merits. But to some degree, sometimes you know how it is. You guys all know what online discourse looks like. It always goes too far. There's nothing wrong with criticizing something, but when it gets to the point that your day's getting ruined because of it, or you're wasting too much energy on it, you've probably gone too far. I think it's worthwhile to look at this kind of stuff because it kind of shows you your biases, kind of shows you where you're thinking. I always love looking at it from the perspective, okay, this is the manga, but in real life, where would my emotions get in the way or that kind of stuff? Where would my cognitive blinders be on? I think that's one of the good stuff when you have stuff like this, and it's always worthwhile to look at people's interpretations and biases. But yeah, it's just really fiery. If I was looking at this as a regular reader, I just read it, I think okay, yeah, at least we got that sorted out. There is one thing that I personally didn't like because I just feel like it's a cop-out and I would be disappointed about. But it's just okay, yeah, no, good. We got a nice little resolution to that. And hey, if Toga didn't kill any of the heroes while she was having her tantrum, and yes, I'm 100% infantilizing her because that's what she is. She still is. She's her cognitive faculties are super impaired. So I'm gonna 100% still make fun of her in that way. Hey, she's a murderer. I'm allowed to make fun of her. Okay. No, I really should be nice. The high road here is to be respectful, even in the face of utter madness. But at the same time, I can be a bit flippant, right? I can be a bit flippant. We know each other. Just know that I'm doing it all in jest. If we were being very serious about this, I'd be a little bit more respectful. But we don't need to be serious. We're having a good time. When I look at the situation, it's really interesting just seeing people be so bloodthirsty about this, killing Toga. Yes, I feel kill Toga if 100 people or more than one person is about to be killed. That's really when it comes down to it. If there's no loss of life happening, then I don't see the problem with keeping her alive. Now, mind you, it gets kind of finicky here because Toga unleashed the Twice Horde. But in my mind, it's if you kill Toga, the Twice Horde isn't going to disappear. So at that point, you're probably better off getting her to de-escalate so that she can maybe deal with the Twice Horde by herself, or try and calm the rest of her down, right? Which kind of leads me into the fading of the Twice Horde is definitely one thing I'm not 100% on. We know that the ideals of heroics, as explained by Fat Gum back when he was with Kirishima, they win as long as they are able to save everyone and keep the villain alive as well. That's why Hawks and his moment with Twice, he didn't go for the kill with Twice. The ideals of a hero mean saving the bad person as well. And when I gotta put an asterisk on this because heroes aren't therapists and they shouldn't be therapists. You have to go to school to be a therapist. You have to have years of practice to be a good therapist. It's ridiculous that you're asking a girl who's only been in high school for a year to be a therapist. Pretty much making sure the villain doesn't die is what the hero should be doing. So when it comes to Ochako, it's yeah, well, she's going a little bit further above and beyond because she's close to death herself. But she's going above and beyond because she wants to save Toga. Good for her, right? We already talked about this. Good for her. It's strange to me to want to kill Toga in this situation in particular, especially in one where her being alive might be critical to solving the problem that is the Twice Horde. I feel that being super bloodthirsty just isn't going to work in Hero Academia, and we're also at the end of Hero Academia, man. Where the man's doing his best to finish up the story and do. One of the big issues with Horikoshi is that his foundations weren't strong enough to support the weight of this massive final arc. But the man's trying. There's so much duct tape in so many places. He's keeping the structure up. He's trying really hard. And then when it comes to Toga, you didn't start from a really good place. Honestly, if you went back and you just adjusted Toga slightly to remove some of the murders that she did at the beginning of the story, just like to just like slide those things around just a little bit, or like recontextualize them just a little bit, it would be a better reaction now. But you know, he did what he could with what he started with, and Toga did not have a great destiny, so it's really amazing that he was able to get this much going. Look, I'm looking at this from a perspective of a glass half full and not a glass half empty, alright? One thing I did see, I did see someone put a deep dive on Reddit where Toga's the most popular figure. Their math looked reasonable, and it was like based on reporting from a lot of figure resellers, so maybe there's some merit there. Point is, like, Toga probably has a lot of fans. This is probably going to be okay. Anyway, at the end of the day, we see an idealistic solution. Now, there are a few parts that I'm like, but let's move into that part that I do think is really bad. Just, I want to talk it through, like, the Twice Horde. So, for me personally, I look at the Twice Horde, and I just think, like, this is going to be such a cool thing to try and solve. It's going to require creativity, because in my mind, I can't imagine how Toga not being twice stops the Twice Horde. I never knew that double requires the person to be alive for it to still work. And like with the Twice that we saw when Twice got killed, he was still standing even though Twice might have already been dead. So like, that's just like the weirdest little thing. The thing that makes it sad is that on a meta level, Ochako was largely unneeded when it comes to saving the heroes. Because if the time running out on Prime Toga stops the Twice Horde, then they just had to hold out long enough. Like, Ochako wasn't needed. Ochako was only needed for saving Toga when we look at it at the most, like, meta design level. And that just makes me kind of sad. Just because the Twice Horde was just so inconvenient. It was so hard. How do you deal with this? And it's just like, this is like the most convenient solution. Hey guys, you don't have to deal with it, because Toga has a time limit. And it just makes me feel like, okay, what was Toga thinking? She used the Twice Horde over here in this area. Was she planning on overwhelming people? But like, Tiger is still alive, Kamui Woods is still alive, Jiro's still alive. Like, she didn't do really well with what she had. This was a girl with a tactical nuke in her hand, and she ultimately got done in by a time limit. And it's just, it's a weird power interaction. But on the from the perspective of like, bros, I need to move on because like the manga's ending. I want to be done with the series. It's like, okay, sure. Getting rid of the Twice Horde through the most convenient method, you know, it removes how much time you have to spend. So I get it. It's just unfortunate. I was so interested to see like how we were gonna solve this issue, but we're just getting it fading away. Also, why is it just fading away into gas? Why isn't it sludge? Actually, no, wait, sorry. Actually, no, yeah, sludge is both Toga and Twice. Yeah, man, it just, that's the only part. I'm just disappointed. I wanted to see a cool conflict resolution. Now, another big spot people were criticizing, like, there's a lot of spots they're criticizing. One of the spots I saw, though, at the end is, like, Toga asking, hey, am I cute? And Ochako being like, you're the cutest. And people criticizing that, and it's like, you gotta really break it down. From Toga's side, Toga's crazy, so she gets a pass. Like, she's fixated on this. This is like her whole reason for being, alright? So yeah, you telling Toga she's cute, gonna make her the happiest girl in the world. And honestly, you probably want her to be the happiest girl in the world because you want to stop like stabbing people in the throat, alright? So that's alright. On Ochako's side is the one that always is the one that gets like a little bit extra scrutiny, because it's like, Ochako, people are bleeding all around you, and you're like stuck in the air with this girl. All might be getting gutted for the second time in his life, for all you know, and you're focused on the girl right in front of you, telling her that she's the cutest. Now, see, the thing is here, Ochako's smart. Ochako's a psychologist, apparently. She knows that she better be talking Toga's language, because after all this effort, no way is she gonna screw everything up by breaking Toga's heart and telling her that she's not cute at all and she should stop smiling. There is no way in any reality where that makes sense, alright? So Ochako kind of has, she made her bed, she has to lie in it. She has to go all the way. Like, everyone's relying on her right now, because if Toga gets back on the ground and Toga starts even like, if Toga even so much as steps to the right, everyone's gonna lose sight of her. It's just what's going to happen. The girl's naked. She's even more mobile than she ever has been before, right? So 100%, you want to talk Toga down still. Like, you don't want to give this up. One thing I think is happening is that people see Toga being told she's cute, and they're like making this equivalent with Toga's been forgiven. Bro, you can be a criminal and still be cute, right? So I think it's very likely that Toga's going to be restrained very soon here. Mind you, Ochako's probably going to have to babysit her, but Toga's probably going to be restrained until she has to go help Shigaraki or something like that. So I think people see Ochako telling Toga she's cute, and they see that as a forgiveness of everything that Toga's done. Even though the author has been very obsessed with saying, bros, no, like no one's forgotten what Toga's done, but we gotta start the healing somewhere, and this is where it starts. So, you know, we are dealing with a lot of things that I think are probably going to be solved later on when we have, you know, the rest of the manga. But ultimately, when it comes down to the Toga Ochako fight, you gotta realize it's an idealistic manga. We kind of saw where things were going. Honestly, we didn't talk about love as much as I thought we were going to, so that's actually a pretty good stuff. It's a pretty good spot. Mind you, people do make fun of Ochako for like talking about that one little bit in the chapter. We'll get to that. This was really good, again, in terms of de-escalating Toga. This was a really good negotiation. I think this is kind of what you want to end up doing. At least now there's going to be some degree of understanding and answering for Toga's crimes in the future. And, you know, the first one's always the hardest one. Like, they need to start setting a precedent right here of how heroes can potentially treat villains. Now, the thing here, though, like, you have to be realistic with these poor people. And I don't mean the villains, I mean the heroes. Ochako's only one person, man. She can't save everyone that's like Toga. It's going to be impossible. There's too many people that are like Toga. And Ochako can't reach out to every single one of them. Like, there's no way Ochako's going to be able to reach out to Muscular safely. Muscular's too far gone, man. And, like, the author knows it. Like, some people are just too far gone. But, like, in the case of Toga, like, I think Ochako even says it. Like, there was something in Toga. The signs were there. Like, Toga was still... It was like a twice situation. Toga could still be saved to some degree, I think, is what Ochako saw. It's going to be really interesting to see how we go with All For One. If All For One gets treated the same way as, like, if someone had helped him when he was a young kid, things would have been different. It's going to be interesting to see where we go with All For One. It's either he could have been changed, or he was the epitome of evil from the day he came out of his mom's uterus. Anyway, let's get into the page-by-page walkthrough. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that Hagakure is here. The ones who are interesting are like Bakugo kind of floating around, and then you have All Might not facing the crowd anymore. Kind of feels like he's going away from the future, like, or like, you know, what was Horikoshi thinking when he drew this? Are all the kids looking to the future, whereas All Might is the one man standing between them and the past, protecting them from whatever's coming up from the past? Is he protecting their past pretty much? Or like, you know, pretty much he's not going towards the future because he's busy protecting them. I wonder if that's what we're ultimately getting here. Now let's see, is Shinzo part of this grouping? Shinzo, are you here somewhere, bud? Don't see him anywhere. People also pointed out that Jiro here has a covering there. Honestly, one quick eri is all that's needed to fix it. I think this is just everyone's current status. And Tokoyami and Dark Shadow are still here, so I assume Tokoyami, that kind of confirms Tokoyami didn't have Dark Shadow stolen. That's what I would kind of assume. Sero has glasses, like whatever. Yeah, man. It's the 9th year anniversary. Cool stuff. Glad we're here. Let's stick the ending. Alright, so first page, what do we got? It's just pretty much just reminding us that something happened with Zero Gravity. I gotta tell you guys, I'm actually really surprised that we still had a whole chapter of Toga versus Ochako to go through. I thought like with last week we could have just ended it there, but I guess Horikoshi wanted to really sell it. Anyway, it pretty much just tells us that whole chains of them are floating, just connecting what we saw earlier. We see that there's a twice here on the ground. You know, if I was Toga, I would not have just stopped to like start staring up at the sky personally, but you know, the villains are kind of slow. Anyway, what you end up seeing with the twices is that Toga's transformation is falling apart in a lot of different ways. Now, this is one of the weird parts for me, because like the way these quirks are interacting is just so odd. If I'm making copies of myself as twice, I would assume that I'm making them as according to the measurements that I took before I made them. In other words, these would be Togas who would get made with 40 minutes worth of twice time. So it's really interesting that they're coming out with the degradation. Like, it doesn't make sense to me logically. Like, if I list everything out here, if I was doing any of my power systems, this doesn't follow. Like, the logic to me just doesn't follow, like, why exactly the Toga clones are being affected by real-time Toga. It doesn't make sense. Because, again, remember, like, Twice has to take measurements in order to update the clones that he's about to make. But yet you have this situation where they're being produced in this manner. I think the way that, if I was Horikoshi and I have to like work out the logic here, I have to put in a stipulation that Toga's transformation time is global. So like the thing that governs how long Toga has her transformation for has to exist in something like metaphysical space, where all subsequent iterations of Toga draw from that same metaphysical source. Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense when it comes to the way that Twice's quirk works when it comes to the measurements. Anyway, I think, you know, this is a side effect of just wanting to wrap everything up here. So, you know, this is one of those things where I kind of hope that Horikoshi addresses it in a volume. Just because I don't understand, without going metaphysical, why the Togas are updating with the real-time timer of Toga's transformations. And I'm assuming that the like the little moments where you see Toga's hair popping out is a sign of the transformation running out. Actually, when everyone fades away, my next question is like, did the Jiro clones fade away too? Or not the Jiros, the Toga clones with Jiro. Actually, they should have. They should have. Anyway, yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is that the Toga clones are fading away. As much as I would love to dig into the power logic, digging into power logic at the end of a series is insane. Because at that point, like, the author doesn't really care anymore, and things are just happening because they need to happen. Okay, page 2 is really interesting, because it's just like the very overt confirmation. Yes, this is a quirk awakening. It's really funny because commenter White Despair was saying like, we don't know if it's a quirk awakening, because like if Ochako had this capability before, then it's just like natural training. It's like, yeah, sudden quirk expansion, man, sudden quirk expansion. Anyway, yeah, quirk awakening, good. Now on page 2, I don't really see anything. Okay, actually there's many valuable things here. So let's go here. We have Tiger just pointing out to Kamui Woods that he's an idiot. Bro, I'm bleeding. Obviously, I'm the real one. And this is, like, again, one of the questionable parts. Because, like when Horikoshi does this, what he's doing is, hey, let me remind the readers that the Twices have a durability issue. Now, me personally, does a durability issue matter when you're able to handle, like, 20 people standing on top of you without getting smushed into a puddle of goo? I don't think so. But yeah, no, he's just reminding you of the durability issue. And then, actually, he's reminding you of a lot of limitations, because he reminds you of the limitations of Ochako's power being 3 tons. And it's like, yeah, bro, I would assume she'd be able to, like, train it up from a year ago. And of course, the final thing we get here is, my whole body's going cold, but what matters right now is pretty much Toga. Is that I want to reach out and touch that sword inside of Toga. So this one is just really important, because you have to remember that Ochako's going to be pretty close to death's door here. And I feel like zero gravity working on that blood probably made it flow out faster. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Diffusion is pretty much happening from her body to the rest of the atmosphere. Yeah, we'll have to see what ultimately happens with Ochako. Is she going to get a blood transfusion from Toga, or is Eri going to fix everything? Just giving that page some appreciation, because I thought it was a really nicely drawn page of Ochako and Toga. Moving on to the next page. This is one of the pages I saw a lot of people criticizing in the early spoilers. But what you have to understand for the first half of this section, page 6, is that the wind is blowing the Twices away. So that makes sense. Last time we talked about would the Twices actually go up towards the sky? And I guess yeah, if the wind's blowing in a particular direction, it could lift them up. So that's cool. I still think the Twices should be making human chains back to the ground to pull themselves back down, but whatever. They're all pretty much freaked out. Or Toga's pretty much freaked out. Anyway, at bottom page 6, we have Ochako going into the whole thing about my family was poor and my folks were always looking kind of gloomy. I set out to become a hero to make their lives easier and cheer them up. Mind you, remember, initially she wanted to make money. But her parents told her to follow her own dreams, alright? Gotta remember that part. Anyway, we go here, and she said, as I grew up, I learned that the world was full of other people, not just my parents in our home. And people were criticizing that, saying like, oh yeah, thank you for acknowledging that you just abandoned your parents. And it's like, I just don't, like, sometimes there's like there's some leaps in logic that I don't understand. And mind you, like, the most, if I steelman the position, it's pretty much, people think that Ochako abandoned her parents. And it's like, or like, people have maybe even more of a bias towards protecting their family before protecting the greater. And that's fair. That is 100% fair. But like, when I look at this, I can't help but see developmental psychology and play a part here. You start as an egocentric being. Your next stage of development is that you realize that, hey, other people matter too, you know? And then you go into the other stage of development, which is an extension of the other one, being that, yo, you know, other people have it hard. My family's like got this going on, but other people have it hard. And mind you, at that point is where you go like, okay, listen, I'm only one person. I don't have that many resources. I'm just going to focus on my family. They're the most important thing to me. They're the ones I'm going to help. Or you go in the other direction like, okay, my family has a shitty time, but like, let me be the tide that raises all ships. I'm going to try and be that person so I can help everyone in one go. Like, maybe my family doesn't get helped the fastest, but they'll be helped at the end of the day. Either perspective is fine. So it's just very interesting to see people's reactions and look at this part and say that there's some kind of betrayal occurring here, when this is just a natural development. Like, bros, remember, Ochako is the most normal person out of everyone here when it comes to the heroes in Class 1A, or like the main heroes Class 1A. Izuku, Bakugo, and Todoroki, and to some degree Ida, those guys are not normal. They are shonen manga characters. But Ochako's grounded. Ochako's rooted. Like, this is just a... If there's anything with this chapter, it's like, it's an adherence to the themes of Hero Academia, or like an adherence to the character arcs of Hero Academia. This makes sense. It makes sense that Ochako would say, I didn't ever think about other people suffering. I was too focused on my family. And like, when you think about it, other dramas in any other context, a person going from seeing something only through the lens of their family to acknowledging that there is a lens that they can see through, which encompasses the entire world, that's the mark of a character development. So it's really interesting just where people are in terms of the way they're viewing the material. Like, this is consistent with who Ochako is. Ochako is a normal girl who went through 1 year of hero school and is now like making her way and developing her moral view of the world. It's ridiculous that people are expecting Ochako to have the wisdom of a 50-year-old. Like, bro, the girl is basic. All right? Like, this is like the beginning of her not being basic. And again, it's not her fault she's basic. She lived in a relatively fortunate part of society in this regard. Yeah, no, it's just always so interesting to see the reactions. And again, some people, again, totally understandable because of where their value system is. But like, when you're looking at Ochako, you have to at least appreciate the consistency with which Ochako stayed a normal girl. Now, this part is a little bit less defensible. You go, I learned that the world's full of other people, not just my parents in our home. Then I fell in love with Izuku, and now I'm trying to stop you. Alright, I feel like there's a lot of things that happen in between these things. I feel like there's a lot of lessons that could have been like just jammed in there. I fell in love with Izuku. I made friends and learned all these different ways of life, or learned about all these different ways of interacting with people. Actually, that would have been a really good one. I learned about all these different ways of interacting with people, and have a little flashback to like how she said not to go help Bakugo, because that's, yo, you guys might not remember, but like that moment that Ochako said to not help Bakugo when he got kidnapped was one of the moments that people used to say that Ochako was a traitor because of how like heinous it was at that moment in time. And Ochako never apologizes for it the way that Suyu does. So it's, you gotta remember, like, little things Ochako has done like actually were really formative for people's opinions of her, and also like for her herself. Heck, Night Eye was another big milestone for her. It's like, I've learned what it means to see someone die, right? And now I'm trying to stop you because like, you could have tied it up so well there, like, I don't want you to die, Toga, because that actually would have had a lot of weight in it. This is the part where when people criticize it, it's like understandable, because the biggest thing here is like, from the author's perspective, you kind of have to summarize everything because you have to go through it very quickly. But it's when you summarize things that things like stand out, because it's pretty much what the author thinks is important versus what the reader thinks is important in Ochako's journey. So that's like one spot where you're probably always going to have an issue with readers, because the summary, honestly, like the more points you have in a summary, like the more readers you will have on your side. Well, like, what practical advice do I have here? Probably do a 5-point summary. Don't do a 3-point summary. Like, 3 is a pretty nice stable number, but don't do a 3-point summary. So like the 3 points that the author has is: I learned that the world's full of other people. I fell in love with Izuku, and now I'm trying to stop you. Nah, too much stuff. Like, it gives way too much focus onto the love aspect of Izuku, and it like what it does to every other formative experience for Ochako, just, it doesn't feel good. Just do a 5-point summary. 5-point summaries are usually good. Like, no one's gonna complain about a 5-point summary. In terms of the length, people will still find ways to complain if they're really invested. But if they're really invested, it doesn't matter, because they're already, like, you got them hook, line, and sinker. It doesn't matter if they're complaining, if they're already really invested. Again, we're at the end here, you know. You've got, like, Horikoshi has a captive audience. Like, if you dislike this chapter, you're more likely to just ignore it and just move on with your day than not, unless you're, like, gonna really pick fights on Reddit. Anyway, we have another good shot of Ochako. I spent quite a bit of time there just because that is one of the important spots. Anyway, this is probably one of the most repetitive parts, just because you see that Ochako is still screaming the same things over and over and over. That being like, yo, Toga, please just tell me. But the other page is amazing. So we have the metaphor, right? We have Ochako looking at the witch and still looking strong and resolute. So what I see here is pretty much Toga posturing, like she's like putting on a brave face. Hey, look, I'm a scary person. Oh, little girl, I'm gonna hurt you. You know, she's pretty much testing Ochako, like, don't you want to like run away from me? That kind of stuff. That's the message that I ultimately see here. And Ochako's like, bruh, just take my blood. I'm offering it to you. Let's be friends. All right, cool. And before that, you had Toga just flashing back through her life. Now, people, I saw a read that says that the fibers here indicate that her stomach has a hole in it. And people were pointing out, well, this might be the metaphor about the bird burrowing into her stomach. So really interesting to keep that idea there. In terms of the design here, we've seen, like, this is a motif that we saw in the Hero Academia art exhibition, so it's cool to see it here. But yeah, no, I think this is such a powerful image. Pretty much Toga is trying to intimidate Ochako and trying to prove herself correct, that people think she's scary, and then Ochako's staying confident in front of it. I think it's a really good moment, really good storytelling through imagery. Alright, so we move on to another part that that had people saying stuff, because like when people see this, they just go like, oh, Toga's bi, and it's like, bro, like, you are not fully understanding the degree to deviate. You're not understanding the degree to which Toga's mind is not the same as everyone else's. And like, the author makes it so clear. Toga goes in, I fall in love really easily with animals, villains, heroes, boys, girls. After all, they have such amazing blood pumping through them. Bro, Toga will fall in love with anything that has blood. Alright? That's what she's pretty much saying. Like, when she looks at an animal, she is not seeing, oh, yo, this is a furry little critter with like who knows how many diseases and who knows how many funguses like infecting it right now. This thing is a blood sac. And that blood is so red, bro. Anyway, that's what she's saying. That's what she's saying. She doesn't care about the person. She cares about the blood that's flowing in them. They've all got such amazing blood pumping through them. Like, she ultimately wants to see people bloodied and trying hard. Like, right now, like, Ochako's probably ticking a lot of boxes for her. Anyway, we go through it. It's really interesting just what people like gravitate toward. Anyway, we go through it. We have Toga saying that she gets jealous for people telling her that she's not allowed to grin, pretty much. And we go into another page where we see the kids turning into bigger kids. Okay, so one thing I actually really do like here, like, again, I just did the Bleach review. So I'm thinking about what I said I really loved about Bleach. What I really love about Hero Academia, and this is to Hero Academia's detriment when it comes to people that don't think about Hero Academia. It's not you guys, because you guys are watching my video, so clearly you want to think about Hero Academia in other perspectives. Horikoshi is the master of dialogue patterns. And I really, really hope that this is maintained in the Japanese translation, because otherwise it's the translator who adds his spin on this. But going into Toga's thing here, and having her go into the cuz-like, going into specifically this construction, is like, yeah, that is the way a teenager speaks. Like, it really sells the image that, oh yeah, the girls are talking about love. This is like two little girls talking about love. Cause like then he called me a freak or something. The lack of sophistication here, just the pattern, the like is such a, indicative of our current culture or young culture, right? So really good and really showing that to some degree Toga regressed to childhood innocence, not only in what the author is trying to show with the imagery, but also in her speech pattern. It adds another level of vulnerability here. It adds another level of innocence. And then we have, then he'd think I was definitely not cute at all. So, oh sorry. So what's really cool in this construction, I was definitely not cute. That by itself is all right, but then you have the at all, which reinforces it. So you have a double reinforcement. Like, if you were to run that through Grammarly, you might have Grammarly maybe pointing out that this is redundant. If you ran it through Writer Pro Aid or Writer Aid Pro, if you ran it through there, they're more likely to point out that this is redundant. Specifically, it's the definitely and the at all, because you're doing a double absolute on that one. But on a kid 100% would not have a sophisticated pattern like this. So again, really fits. I really hope the Japanese maintained it, because like honestly, for the translator, I don't think he'd be able to match this, because this is more consistent with Horikoshi's style in general. I don't think the translator would be able to match this unless he was translating the idea already. Now you guys might think the specificity isn't worthwhile, but like come on, like how many times do you have to see like the metaphors before you see that it's purposeful, right? Like nah. Horikoshi puts a lot of effort into his dialogue. Like All for One is the bigger example of it, but he does do a good job with this kind of level of minutia. Okay, we move on. They'd lecture me and scold me, and like she talked about again how the League of Villains accepted her. Remember, guys, the metaphor to apply with the League of Villains is that they're crackheads enabling another crackhead to be. All right, that's the problem with the League of Villains. It's nice that they accept you, but they're accepting destructive patterns that aren't going to help you in the long run. Because with that, could live and love how I needed to. And then I think this is where Ochako goes in. I think this is Ochako speaking. The signs were always there from you, but it took me so long to notice. Anyway, it's really nice that Toga ultimately gives up on trying to stab Ochako, and that they ultimately get a hug. We then go into the sad part of Jin fading away. I already talked about my opinion about this. I'm just sad. I'm sad that this is how it's ultimately going. It'd be cool if they fade away because of some weird power interaction with Toga's feelings wavering or something like that, but like what she gives is that Jin's blood is used up, so therefore she can't be Jin anymore, and therefore the doubles stop existing. Yeah, man, I guess just say that anything produced by the double quirk dies when the original source of the double quirk dies. I guess that's just the way to do it. It's just like, I don't know. If it was me, I would have put like more things to suggest that could happen later on. But I also like tighter power logic rules. Like, I will die by my power logic rules if it comes down to it, which I know isn't the style for everyone. Honestly, look, man, if you're writing like super hardcore power fantasy, or not power fantasy, if you're writing like fantasy with a lot of supernatural powers, you probably want to give yourself a lot of ways out. But at the same time, like when you find a power system that's a hard magic power system and you see it consistently held all the way from beginning to end, like you admire that, because like that's a different kind of effort. Like usually with writing, the more ways out you give yourself is like technically like the weaker the writing. It really depends. Like you could argue both ways, but that's a whole debate for another thing. Believe me, I want to tell you why like giving yourselves way out is actually really smart, but it really depends on what type of writer you are. If you're a planner, then keeping things consistent is a bigger mark of mastery for your particular style. If you're like a pantser or pretty much like a discovery writer, knowing how to keep things open and keep things deniable, like deniable plausibility and all that kind of stuff, is a better mark for your style. In general, that's my theory on it anyway. You have Ochako doubling down on the value of the smile while the twices are fading all around. There's nothing really here other than Toga then asking if she's cute and Ochako saying the cutest in the world. And, you know, people have an issue with that, bro. Just Just let the girls, like, look. Actually, I'm just looking at Ochako's face right now. Look at that girl, man. She's barely keeping her eyes open, bro. She is delirious. She is like, she's going loopy from blood loss, bro. Be nice to Ochako. If she wants to say that Toga is the cutest in the world, bro, her brain's not getting enough blood. Let her say whatever her heart needs to say, unfiltered. All right. Like right now, Ochako needs Toga's help the most if we're gonna do a blood transfusion. I wonder if they're the same blood type. Anyway, yeah, there we are. End of 394. The next page, I'm not really gonna show it. It's a textless page. It's just showing the twices fading away, and they almost look like dark clouds. In the spoilers, I thought those were dark clouds, but no, it's just the twices. So yeah, twice fades away. Toga has been successfully talked down. Toga will not land on the floor and start slashing throats, but she never did it when she had the opportunity to. So yeah, no, that's the end of the Toga Ochako fight. Overall, guys, you know what? I see this, and I think the big thing to take away from this is, like, if we had this level of back and forth with all the other guys, we would, things would still be taking long. Now, it's a bit unfortunate because, like, with Dobby, I kind of want this level of rhetoric being exchanged, and just showing how stubborn you gotta be to, like, walk someone down from the edge and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, when it comes down to it, you know what? I think overall, when I look at the technical level on display here, Horikoshi stuck to his guns, so he stuck to the theme of idealism. He stuck to the themes of Ochako, and he stuck to the themes of Toga. Like, on paper, the rhetoric, I think, is solid. Now, one of the weak parts is that at some point, it becomes repetitive because Ochako has to keep calling out to her. Now, this is where it kind of breaks down, because, like, some people say that communications in fiction should be idealized, or should be the most efficient possible. And some people say, like, well, no, communication in real life isn't efficient, so communication in fiction should not be efficient. It really depends on what kind of story you're doing. But specifically with that one page where Ochako was repeatedly calling out to Toga, that's where, like, the theory hits the practicality at that point. For that one, it's like, it's unfortunate that it comes off as a little bit repetitive, but in a real life communication, this is kind of how it would go. And I think in this case, like, Horikoshi's trying to go more towards a grittier kind of back and forth. Although, if I was doing that kind of repetitive line, at that point, it is just fluff for my particular style. So that's why I'd be a bit careful with it. And also, like, I write novels, right? So with novels and novel readers, there's an issue of the illusion of wasted words. And for me, I feel like when I'm imagining things being, like, adapted into a manga, I feel like the fluff is actually really important, because it kind of spaces and paces things a little bit more and gets people speaking in the right timings. But for a novel where sometimes your word count is being monitored, yeah, you kind of want the more efficient thing. So I think if a novel reader would probably see that, and they would be more likely to say that, that was kind of dragged out. Novel readers are very likely to say things are dragged out. But it's just it's a matter of taste, right? Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below, and thanks for watching. I'm happy to be done. Happy to see the reactions, and yeah, till next time. I hope you have an absolutely great day. My voice is kind of hoarse because it's been like 1 hour and 30 minutes of straight talking now. Alright, guys. See ya.